Hello everyone, Leafread here with The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. This is an interesting book. A turn of the century take on sort of science, sci-fi horror. A pretty niche area of writing. The only one I can really think of is Lovecraft at the same time, and then you had the other sci-fi writers of the 20th century, but this is one of the earlier ones. And I say sci-fi, but more so fantasy horror. It might be more accurate. And so what's interesting or different about this novel is that, well, what it is actually, it's a collection of short stories. And each story has a running theme and thread through it that features the King in Yellow. So what's interesting is that in the universe that Mr. Chambers has created, The King in Yellow is a notorious, infamous play that has come out, and apparently it's so beautiful, but so sad, and so emotional and so depressing, and it's a tragedy of some sorts, that it's been banned in most countries around the world. And now, because apparently if you read it, you could become so moved, so emotional, you're driven to either madness or suicide, or probably both. And so there are actually only 4 stories that do actually feature the King in Yellow. And in some of the stories, it plays a major role. In some of the stories, it's just simply mentioned. The two kind of locations definitely seem to be America and France. And Chambers was an American writer, and I assume he obviously had a very strong connection with specifically Paris. And so the 4 stories are, one revolves around this one individual who's driven to madness, and he is inhabiting the world of the King in Yellow, which, he ends up being driven to madness and to murder. The other story is about this sculptor in Paris who finds this liquid which can turn things to marble instantly. You have one story about a man in a church. You have the last story about a man who dreams he is in a hearse and already dead. So very much like, kind of like Lovecraft, where dreams play a very important role, at least in that story. And the rest of it are just other sort of nice short stories. Some of them are very romantic. There's a story about a mademoiselle in Paris that all the art students long to be with, but she turns them all down and is only known by her smile, and no one knows her name, only the street she walks on. So it's a nice collection of short stories, but I wouldn't say it's anything too amazing. It is interesting to read and to, kind of see how early 19th century horror or short stories and thrillers kind of were written, but I wasn't really super gripped by it. It's kind of like an interesting take on, certain themes, but not anything super interesting. I think I would read it if you have to, or if you're interested in this kind of literature, but otherwise I can't really recommend it. It's very much in that okay zone. Anyway, but there it is, The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. And as always, keep reading.